Okay, so we're going to do two things today. We're going to work on a simple search form and also investigating the session hash in Ruby or in Rails for uh, preserving state across the web application that we're writing. I'm going to use the really simple store that I developed in an earlier lecture to demo this out. So if you remember where this store was at, it looked something like this. We had a front page by way of a store controller. We had two sort of admin areas, not created by way of active admin. They were simply created by way of scaffolding, although I did add a password to them using HTTP authentication. I'm already logged in, so I don't get prompted for that. And the home page right now, it just sort of loads all of our products, and for any one product we can view just a page dedicated to that product all on its own. The routes that we have available to us are quite simple. We have a root route, which is going to the store index action, and we have a member route here, a member route because it contains an ID, /store/ID, goes and runs the show action of the store controller. That's what loads up these individual pages. So store 1 or store 2 would load up the various products that are associated with those IDs. If we look at the controller, we have this index action, effectively just going to display all, and a show action, which is going to use the ID from the route that we set up, the member route, and find the particular product in question and show it. So a very simple front end. We either are showing our entire collection or a single item inside of our collection. What I'd like to add is a simple search. I'll put this search on, maybe I'll make a partial for the search, and I'll make it sort of appear below this simple navigation menu, and we'll make it so that when you search for a product by name or partial name, so if I put in cheese I should get goat cheese, or if I put in goat I should also find goat cheese, that it would return to us all the products that match the keywords that I'm searching for. That's what we'll start with. So if we go to my layouts file, we can see that I already have a header partial, and that's where I'm going to put my form. And so that's in here like this. Now, our first urge when working with a view is often just to start writing HTML, right? So we would say, oh, form, and give it a particular action or a method, etc., etc. But typically with Rails, we use helpers to build our more complicated HTML for us, or even things like links. So instead of building an href here, we use link to. So we're not going to build the form by hand. There are two different ways to build forms in Rails. And if we go to the Rails guides, there's a whole guide dedicated to forms. If you think about what you do on the web as a user or as a programmer, it's interacting with forms is one of the most common tasks. So it makes sense that Rails would have helpers to help you out in that respect. So there's Action View Form Helpers, a guide for that. If we look at some of the forms that we've already worked with through this application, the ones that were built for us by way of scaffolding, if we look to the product admin, for example, and we go to New Product, or we were to edit a product, we get a form. And if we view source, it's a regular HTML form, right? It has a form tag that has a particular action, it has like submit buttons or selects or inputs. But we didn't build this form ourselves. It was written for us by way of the scaffolding, and if we went to look at it, app views products, we'd see inside of this form partial, that it was built by way of a helper called form4. And form4 is used when we want to build a form that is for a particular active record object, in this case for a particular product. And so we pass form4 an object of type product, and we get back this f variable, which is called a form builder. And f gives us the ability to build aspects of our form, like a label or a text field, and bind them to different properties of this particular object. This gives us the ability of, when we go to, for example, editing a product, the product's details, the stuff that was in the database, gets automatically seeded into our form. And that is happening by way of passing the product object to form4, and so that f is sort of aware of the product that it's building the form for, and if the product has some data inside of it, that data will be seeded into the form itself. If in the case of a new form, it still gets a product object passed to it. Like if we were to look at the controller, you'd see that the new action still has an @product variable accessible to it, but it's just an empty brand new product. So when form4 in this case sees @product, sees an empty product, and so it gives us an empty form. This is however specific for forms that are for particular rows in our database table or for particular active record objects, either for the creation or the editing of these things. There are other ways to build forms. So if we think back to what we're trying to accomplish here, we want to build a search form, but the search form isn't for one particular product that's in our database. It's just really a way of getting data to a particular controller action so we can search through the collection of all the products. And so there's a secondary helper that we get at our disposal, and it's called form tag. And so we're going to use that. We're going to echo out form tag. And then what form tag takes as its parameters is it's going to take a path and a method. So initially I'm just going to path it to some path because I'm eventually going to need to set up a route for that. And I will give it a method of get. And I'll say it takes a block, so I'll say do. And here I'll say end. And I should be able to go back to my store. And if I view source, there's now a form in there with the action set to at some path, which was my first argument, and the method set to get. And we'll see in a moment why we want to set the method to get. Typically, when we have forms, we use a method of post. But in our particular case, we're going to want to get, and that's just because of some of the functionality we want around the search. So what we would like inside of here is an input of type text for the actual keywords that the user wants to type in, and then a submit button. If we look at how we built forms with form4, we got access to this f variable, and we could do things like f.textfield and f.textarea or f.submit. But we don't have that f form builder available to us, so we have to use sort of longer form helpers. And so here I'll say text field tag and search keywords. And here I'll echo out submit tag search. And notice in front of all three of those, I have the echo, the equals for echoing those into the actual page. If I didn't have those echoes, then we would not see the form in the resulting HTML. And so there's the form. I'll sort of cheat design-wise, and I'll just throw a BR in there to separate it out a little bit from the top menu. And if we view source on that form, once again, you'll see that I now have this input with a name of search keywords, and that name's coming to us by way of the fact that I passed this as my first argument. And we have a input of type submit with a value of search, and that value of search is coming to us by way of this. So we have the form. And the form is ready to send its data to a particular place that will then carry out the search and show us our search results. And so in order to send it to some place, we need both a route, because we need to path the submit somewhere, and we need a controller action to actually carry out the search. And so I'll say something like, in my store controller, I can add a action called search results, and eventually we will do a search here. And just like the others, there's always a view that's automatically associated with our particular actions. And so in this case, what will automatically be loaded would be the view in the app views stores folder called the same thing as our action, search results.html.erb. So I can go make that file. And I'll just make it based off of our index. So I'll just make a copy of the index and change it to search results.html.erb. And inside of it, because I copied and pasted it from the index, it already has the render command to render a collection of products. And at the top, I might say something like search results. And just so that we don't get an error when we initially go here, I'll make a products variable accessible to my, close these down. So eventually we'll do a search here, but for now we're just going to show all products. And now we need a route for search results. And so I define that in my routing file. A GET request, it's going to be a GET request because that's how I've set up my form. So a GET request to search results is going to run the store actions search results method, and I'm going to name this route, not surprisingly, search results. And now that I have a named route, I can go back to my form and I can use that named route as the first argument to form tag where I want this form to post or to send its data to. And I can say search results path. So just like when we use link to and we use the name of the route underscore path, we do the same thing here. We say search results path, the name of the route underscore path. Things should all be linked up now in that I should be able to submit this form, have the data, the search keywords, be submitted along with a GET request to the search results path. The routing file will ensure that that will actually take us to the search results action of the store controller. This will then execute, loading all of our products. Then the default or the associated default view will then be loaded, which is here, which will display all of those products with the word search results above it. So we should be able to see that in action now. I can go back to my really simple store. If I view source, we can now see that the form is properly going to send its results to /search results. That's because it's now using the proper route. And I can put anything I want in here. We're not using those keywords yet. Clicking search will show me all my products. And here's why we wanted to have our form submit by way of a get rather than a post, because the form data ends up by way of a get in our URL. So if you submit a form by way of a post, the form data gets sent hidden from the end user inside of HTTP headers. If you send a form by way of a get, the data gets encoded and placed as key value pairs inside of our URL itself. And what this means is that our search results are now bookmarkable or shareable. You know, we can return to a particular search by way of this particular URL. If we implemented our search with a post, it would work, but we could not link to that search directly. And so if you look at other search engines, Google for example, you'll see that when you do a search, you end up at a particular page where you can grab the URL and you can share that URL with someone else, and they will also get to that same page. So it makes it shareable or bookmarkable when you store that data inside of the URL. So that's why we set our form to a GET request rather than a POST request, just to be friendly in terms of being able to share or bookmark these particular results. But I haven't used the results yet, but you can see they're there. So, and if I search for cat, the search keywords is cat. Change that to something else, or even leave it off completely. Now it's just blank. How do I retrieve those from within my actual controller action? Well, just like we go to the params hash to find things like an ID from our route, we can also go to the params hash to find stuff that a form has sent to us. So here, instead of loading up all products, I can load up all products where the product name is equal to the params at position search keywords. Search keywords being, if I split my screen here, search keywords being the first argument that we pass to the text field tag. So anything that gets entered into this text field tag will be registered as search keywords in our params hash. That gives us the ability to find the user's keywords and use them with a where clause. So the user goes, types something in, hits submit, a GET request is sent, the search keywords end up in the URL, we end up at the search results controller, we use the params hash to extract the keywords from the URL and use them in a where clause. We're still getting a collection of products, and so our associated view can then display those return products. So now if I search for goat cheese, I get goat cheese. If I search for a product that doesn't exist in my database, I get that. It might be nice to give a slightly more helpful message here. So like something along the lines of, if the product's size is 0, then we might want to say no products found. Else, if the size is anything other than 0, whoa, my indentation is like really, really huge. So now when I search for something that's not in my database, it should tell me no products found. If I search for something that is in my database, I could even, say n products found, where n is the size of the particular And so now when I search for goat cheese, one products found. The pluralization is wonky. Rails has a nice little helper for us in that respect. We can just say pluralize size, comma, product. And now if product is supposed to be pluralized, it will get an S on it. If it's not, it won't. So now I could say goat cheese again. One product found. If it finds multiple products, it'll tell me that multiple products were found. I could even include what the search was all about, right? I could say search results for, and then here I could echo out the params apposition search keywords, which was what we were searching for. And so woot, search results for woot, no products found. Back to goat cheese. It's looking pretty much like a search. The only problem is that it's you need to know the exact name of the product in order to find the product itself. If I was just to search for cheese, it would tell me that no products were found, and that's because the SQL statement that's being executed, if we go look in our server, the actual SQL, maybe I don't get to see it. Is it too many JavaScript things? Oh, there it is. The actual SQL statement is select star from products where the product name equals goat cheese. It's an exact match, right? It's looking for only products that have a name exactly equal to goat cheese. Who remembers how to do a wildcard search in SQL? What do? We don't use the equal sign, we use what keyword? Like. And then we have to use wildcards, which instead of asterisks like they normally are, they are what in SQL? Percent is the one, yeah. So instead of just giving a key and a value here, we're going to do a string. And I'm going to say where name like, and what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to just like inject this directly in here and put like wildcards around it. I mean, that'll work. Let's see it in action, and then I'll tell you why that would be a bad idea. Go back to my search, cheese. First of all, I guess it's a bad idea because I did something wrong. Oh, and what I did wrong is this is the actual SQL statement being executed. I need quotes around this. It's a string, so it needs to be quoted. So I need to put single quotes around it. Go back to my document over here. And so cheese finds goat cheese. The letter E should find a bunch of products, so I can see, 3 products, all the products that have the letter E in them. That's good. Goat. 1 product found. So it's working. The problem is that my end user could do something nasty. They could do something along the lines of this. They could submit a search of single quote, semicolon, drop table products, semicolon, dash, dash. And what happens if they did that is that in this string that I'm building up, that's what would be inserted right here. Oops, I didn't actually copy and paste it. Here we are, copy. So that's what would go right here. And so notice the single quote that they inserted would close this string properly. Semicolon would close the statement. Drop table products would then be executed as a separate statement. Dash dash is comment, so that would be commenting out the rest of this cruft, and they've just dropped all the tables in my database. So that's scary, right? Anytime we're allowing our end users to inject data directly into something that's being executed in our database, we have to be on the lookout for this kind of thing, which is called Sql injection. It's very common. It's one of the most common ways of attacking web applications. And there are automated programs designed simply to search out for forms that are vulnerable to this type of thing. And not only for just simply dropping tables, but for, say, gaining administrative access. You could do an insert statement here and create your own admin user if you could properly guess what the admin table looked like. So how do we prevent this? Well, we prevent it by using what Rails gives to us for this actual purpose. We say name like question mark, and then that question mark means this is a placeholder. I'm going to provide one more argument where the actual wildcard keywords are going to be found. I now have to make that wildcard keywords variable. And so I'm going to make it like this. I'm going to say wildcard keywords. And here I'm going to make it equal to, and I'll just wildcard. Oh no, this is my params hash position search keywords. I guess I don't need to have this screen split anymore. Search keywords. So I'm gluing the wildcards on either side of my search keywords. It looks like it's doing the same thing. It looks like, well, okay, you're building your search keywords and eventually they're going to be injected where this question mark is. But what Rails does for us is twofold. One thing is, notice I don't have to put my quotes around it. So Rails will automatically add quotes to the search keywords that are injected there. And the other thing is Rails will scrub or escape for things that could potentially cause Sql injection. So by injecting my user query by way of the question mark, I've solved the problem of being sort of allowing unscrubbed user data into a SQL string. And it should still work like it did before. So I should be able to still say goat and find my goat cheese, or the letter E to find all products that contain the letter E. And again, I should be able to also bookmark this search, or even perform searches just by editing the contents of this URL. So if I went up into this URL and I put cheese in there, it does a search for goat cheese. Same as you can do with Google, right? You can grab the URL of a particular Google search and start modifying the URL itself and submitting it to change the effect it has on the Google search engine. And that's a simple keyword search with SQL injection protection by way of the question mark. So I will add that now to Git. Implemented a simple keyword search. Good. Okay. The second thing I wanted to do today was just to spend a little bit of time talking about preserving state on a web application And this is something that my server-side students know all about. They've had to work in PHP with both browser cookies and session, and we can do the same in Rails. The reason we need to have some kind of mechanism for preserving state is that although we can create variables during particular controller actions, once that data is handed off to the view and then sent out to the end user, all of those variables go out of scope, right? The variables only exist for a single invocation of a request to the Rails application, and then when the user comes back again, or another user comes, or whatnot, as the user's navigating around our website, that state is not preserved. It exists for the sort of the invocation, hands it off to the view gets rendered, and then the state all goes away. But sometimes we want to be able to remember information about particular users over time. And the way we do that is we use a special hash that Rails makes available to us called the session hash. And so the simplest demo of this session hash would be a way of keeping count over how many times a user has visited a particular page. And so if I open up my index view, which is right here, above my products, perhaps I would like to have a paragraph tag. This has also gone strange. Perhaps I want a paragraph tag that says something along the lines of, you have visited this page n times, where n is the actual number that the user has visited. Okay, that's just a hard-coded string, so maybe we need a variable. We can inject something called visit count. We need to make that variable exist on its own. It, of course, doesn't. So we just get nothing. We need to make it exist over here, something like visit count equals 1. We can make use of that pluralized helper again. So I could say like pluralize my visit count with the word time. And so now when it's plural, we should see time. So when it's singular, we should see time. I visited this page 1 time. If I was to manually change this to a larger number, it properly pluralizes for me. And that's about as far as we can get with regular old variables, right? We cannot do something like this, like visit count plus equals 1, because every time the user comes to the index page, visit count is created anew. It does not exist from before. It doesn't preserve its state from before. And so what we need is some way of actually preserving that state, and we're going to do that by way of the session hash. And so the very first time this user comes to our web page, it will be their first time. And so we have to ask session if a particular location within it exists. So if there is something in session at position visit count, and so session is this special hash that Rails makes available to us. And as the programmer, we can just pick keys. So keys of our own choice, and we can store data at those keys, and that data will be remembered and, in a sense, bound to a particular user using a particular browser. So it's not like session is global to all of our users. Session is specific to particular users using particular browsers. So if session exists, well, then the visit count is going to be a session at position visit count +1. If the session doesn't exist, then the visit count will just be equal to 1. And in all cases, we want to preserve that visit count back to session so that it's available to us next time. So here we're saying persist, and this is persist in the long term, persist between HTTP requests, this visit count in session, setting it to this particular value. This visit count will either be 1 or 1 more than it was before. So the very first time the user comes to our page, session at position visit count will return nil, which Rails evaluates as false, and so visit count will be set to 1, and that will be persisted in session. The next time the user comes to visit, there will be something in session at position visit count, so visit count will be set to that thing +1, and that will be then re-persisted back into session. So if I go to my page now, the first time I visited this page 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. How this is done is that what session does for us is that it quickly sends a browser cookie to the user that is interacting with the website. And in this browser cookie, it sort of sends a unique identifier. It says you are this particular user. And the way that browser cookies work is that if a server sets a browser cookie on our browser, every time the browser visits that same server, it will send the cookie back. And so when the cookie gets set on the individual user's browser, it will say you are this particular user. It gives the user a unique identifier. And then when that browser visits the server again, it sends the cookie back and says, I am this unique user. And so what we get is we get a different version of the session hash for every different user that visits our web page. And so if I was to open up a different browser here, so open up Firefox, got Firefox on one side and Chrome on the other. So over here on Firefox, I visited this page 1 time. Here you can see I'm still able to increase this. And this is an independent count over here. And so I could increase it to 6, and then this one will go to 9. Because this browser has been sent one cookie identifying it as a particular user of Rails session. This browser has been set a separate cookie identifying it as a different particular user for session. So there are 2 separate versions of the session hash, one for each of those users. And this scales to however many users you have using your website. So if you have 27 or 27,000 different users, you will have that many separate versions of the session superglobal. It's a very powerful technique, and it also isolates you from some of the trickiness of working directly with browser cookies. So you don't need to worry about managing or manipulating the cookies themselves. You just work with session as if it's a regular old Ruby variable, but it's a special variable. It's a variable that allows us to persist data over time over HTTP requests. And so knowing that, we can start building something similar to a shopping cart. Maybe instead of a full-fledged shopping cart, I will just simply create a way of remembering the user's favorite product. Something like a wish list, but a wish list of size 1. Right? So some way of just flagging a product as, your favorite product and having this product be memorized by way of session over time, and then have that favorite product maybe being displayed somewhere on all pages of this website. So in order to do that, I'm going to need a route. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to use a get route. When we're working with HTTP, there are some rules that we want to deal with that have to do with our particular verbs and what they can or cannot do or should not do on the back end. And any request that's sent by way of a get should be fully cacheable and should have no effect on the back end of our system. Get requests should not modify back-end state in any way, especially database state. So something like this should likely go by way of a post. So I'll say post. And let's just say something like favorite product. It's going to need an ID. And we're going to say something like save favorite product. That's going to be the action. It's going to exist on our store. And I'll give it a name as save favorite product. So it's a member route of sorts because it has an ID in it, right? If we want to memorize the favorite product, we need to know which product we're actually dealing with. And so this is something that if we want it to sort of happen across our store, we can go and add it to the product partial. That's why we have partials. And so right now, maybe somewhere below the price, I could say set to favorite product. So below the price, I could say something like create a link to saying set as favorite product. This needs to go to the route that we just created. I named the route as favorite product. Sorry, Firefox, I don't have time for you right now. I'll close you up. Save favorite product is the name of the route. The route needs to know about which product it's dealing with so that when the route is built, the ID gets injected there. So I'm going to pass to the save favorite product path the product that we're working with, the product in question. Maybe I'll break this onto multiple lines. That's not quite enough because I said that our route should be triggered by way of a post, and by default links are all get requests, and so I'm going to override that ability by saying method post. I think that's the way of doing it. Let's go see if that works. If it works, what I should get is I'll probably get an error, right? Because I don't have anything for that route to actually go to, but the route should at least trigger. So I have these set as favorite product. The route triggered, it just couldn't find the save favorite product action. And just as a digression, how this actually works, how by specifying method post here, this link suddenly posts its data rather than sets a get request. That's done by way of JavaScript. So Rails has JavaScript which looks for links that are built with link to, that have methods other than get. And what will happen is when you actually click on this link, JavaScript will pop into action. It will prevent the default action of the link, which is the GET request, and then it will do an AJAX POST request behind the scenes on our behalf. So it's a little bit of JavaScript enhancement, which means that a lot of Rails functionality will not work if your browser has JavaScript disabled. Something to be considered, because some people do surf the web with their JavaScript disabled, or they run like the NoScript extension or something along those lines for security reasons. Okay, well, we need the action in question. So the action in question was called save favorite product. And here I'm just going to take the session at position favorite product ID, and I'm going to set it equal to the params hash at position ID, because our member route had an ID placeholder in it. And then I don't actually even want this action to have a view of its own. I'm just going to send the user back to I think I can send them back to wherever they were. I think I can do this, redirect to back. Let's see if that actually works or not. Okay, set as favorite product. No. So what am I thinking about there? Rails redirect to back. This is going to be in the controller. Redirect to back. Okay. Sends me back to the index. If I was on the goat cheese page specifically and I set as favorite product, it sends me back there. It doesn't look like it's done anything, but now what's happened is that when the users click that link, I've saved the ID of the product in question, the product that is the user's favorite product. I could now do something like this in my product superglobal. If the product was the user's favorite product, I could inject a special class here. I could say, let's say something like echo out favorite if session at position favorite no, that's the worst way of doing it in the world. That's just going to have a whole bunch of stuff in there. Just to demonstrate this here. If session at position favorite product ID double equals the product ID. This is your favorite product. It's a little too much logic in my view for me, but I just want to demonstrate this. Where have I saved it? Favorite product ID. Favorite product ID. ID. I thought this was my favorite product. Okay, so let's figure out how to debug this. The easiest way to debug this is to actually look at what's saved at that particular place inside of session. So I might, inside of my layout, I didn't quite get it. Inside of my layout, I might here just say favorite, and here I'm going to say session position favorite product ID, just to see what's in there. Favorite is 1. If I go to bubblegum, which has an ID of 2, favorite is 2. If I go down over here, so that looks like it's working. So inside of here, it probably has to do with the type. I wonder if it's saving it as a string. What's that? Oh, you're right. Huh, there you go. So it was saving it as a string. When we're working with the web, whether we're getting stuff by way of GET requests or POST requests, it does come to us by way of strings. And so that's what was going on here. I had to cast it to an integer. This kind of stuff would probably be better off hidden inside of the model. I wonder if I have access to session within my model. I can quickly try a test to see if I do. We don't spend too much time working on things in the model in this course, but of course you can use the model beyond just having active record base on it. I can add methods to all of the objects that are of type product, and this will be dependent on whether or not session is actually available inside of the model or not. But let's just see. Favorite product question mark, and I can now sort of stash this test here. What I'm going to do is on the way in, I'll turn it into an integer. Might as well fix that at the source. And then this could just now be changed to product dot favorite product question mark, which should return true or false. And I'll have it return true or false dependent on session position favorite product ID is double equal to self.id. I should be able to get rid of that too. And it's probably saying you don't have access to that. And so I can give myself access to that. Let's just session. Pass session in. Set as favorite product. This is your favorite product. Set this thing to my favorite product. The shoe phone should now be my favorite product. So there you go. I can now flag a particular product as a favorite. The test is done here where I use the actual product object and I ask it if it's a favorite product and pass it session. And inside of the model, I can just do a quick test of equivalency. I might also want maybe somewhere up at the top of the page on all pages for it to say something about what my favorite product is. So up here I might just have it say what my favorite product is, or maybe even beside where my visit count is. Something along the lines of, if I have a favorite product, then display some information about it. So if session at position, no, I'll do it over in the store controller here. In the store controller, I'm going to make a private method, and I'll call it favorite product. And, or maybe even just like load favorite product. And I'll have it do something like this. I can say if session at position favorite product ID. So if there's something saved there, then I can literally load up that product. I can say favorite product is product.find, and I can find on that. In all of the cases, favorite product doesn't exist, it's false. And I can have this load for all of the actions in my store. There's only a few of them, but I can go up here and I can say before action run load favorite product. And I want that to happen for all of them. Doesn't need to happen for this one here. So I can say except say favorite product. What that means is that before any of these actions, these three here, it's going to run this load favorite product, and it's going to give me a favorite product variable, which will either contain a product or be false. And so now inside of my header, which I think I've closed, oh no, I just wanted it here. Here I could say something along the lines of, if I have a favorite product, so if it's not nil or not false, then I could talk about it. Your favorite product is, and I could link to the favorite product name and the actual path to the favorite product, period. Let's debug this because it might not work on the first go. Your favorite product is bubblegum. Clicking on that would take me to bubblegum. If I set goat cheese as my favorite product, it tells me that my favorite product is goat cheese. I could now have this loaded up across my entire website if I wanted to. Right now I just have it being used on my index, but because of that before action, that favorite product variable, the @favorite product variable, is going to be available across all of my different actions for my store controller. And so they would all have the ability to display the favorite product, similar to what you would want for a shopping cart, right? You're going to want the shopping cart to be displayed at the top of all of your store views. So you would likely use some kind of before action to load up your cart before any of the actions, and maybe creating for yourself a @cart variable. The only difference is that instead of saving a single product ID into session, you will likely be saving an array of product IDs into session, one for each of the products that you wish to purchase. And to make things more complicated, you'd likely have to keep track of a count. So if a user wanted to purchase multiples of a particular product, you would have to be able to deal with that as well. And I think that's all we need to say about that. So if we review what we did, I added a link to each of my products inside of my product partial, and the link was to set as favorite product, and I used a particular path called the save favorite product path, passing in the product in question. The route was a member route, so it took that product that I passed to it, and it would use that product's ID when actually building the URL. When the user clicked on that URL, they would be sent to the save favorite product action, which would then save the favorite product into here, at position save favorite product, converting it first to an integer and then redirect me back to wherever I was. So that's the actual sort of persistence of the favorite product. I then ensured that I loaded up the favorite product for all actions on my site. So if I wanted access to that favorite product across my store, I now have it. That's done by way of this load favorite product. And what it does is if there is something in session at that position, well, it loads it up. I can now sort of fix up that one aspect here, this product being the favorite product. I don't even need that little method really anymore. I mean, it's fine how it is, but I mean, this could also have been replaced now with like if favorite product.id is equal to my product ID. And then I'm not even calling that. That should still work. So goat cheese is my favorite product. If I set bubblegum, now bubblegum is my favorite product. So I replaced that whole method that we created just with a separate little check there. Is the favorite product ID equal to the ID of whatever product is being rendered for this particular invocation of the partial? Meaning I could go back and I could remove that from my model if I wanted to. And that's it. So that's a simplified look at session. To implement the shopping cart, you have to do I won't say significantly more, but it does get much more complicated, as I said, because you're saving now an array of products that the user wishes to purchase, and also potentially a quantity for the number of products of a particular kind that the user wants to purchase. But this should get you going. Does anyone have any questions before I finish? All right, so I will put this up onto Git. Added a favorite product function that uses session. I just realized that there's probably a bug in my code. Might as well fix it right now and show you what that bug is. The bug is this: if I don't have a favorite product set, this favorite product is going to be false, and there's no ID property of false. And so if I come to the website for the first time, this code here is actually going to trigger an error because the favorite product will be false. False.id is going to say bleh. So let's just see that happen. To simulate coming to this website for the first time, I can just open up a incognito window because incognito mode does not share cookies with the rest of your browser. And you can see undefined method ID for false class false. The easiest way to save this or to solve this problem is what?
If add favorite product and so if it's true.
If it's true, so like favorite product and that would do it, shouldn't it? And now when I set a favorite product, it's all good. So yeah, that's a good fix. Thanks, Andrew. And there you go. So I'll commit that fix to git fixed bug with favorite product for new users, and I'll push that to git, and then I will stop the screencast.